and Julia Toriansky.
So that is the voice of Amir Taki. We are live from the Ethereum meetup in London. It's going to be absolute chaos. So we're just setting up at the moment, but there was too many funny things going on, so we thought we'd just go live. You can put your questions in the Q&A. Probably no one will answer them. Probably, almost certainly no one's going to answer them. Because these guys are just going to be talking in very kind of top-down authoritarian, like, you know, kind of style. So everyone in the spirit. Yeah. Right. So, yes, everyone's outside at the moment having a beer because that's the real reason they turn up, is just for the free beer. And obviously to discuss the price of Ether, which is also very important. Never mind the technology. And with us we have Ksenia. Hello. I love your little tribute there in the bottom left of the frame.
Yeah, I'm just on Twitter, yeah. I'm having a beer as well, soon.
Loving the Putin beer. And we also have Jamie Nelson with us.
Yeah.
Hi, everybody. It's good to be here again.
And given that we have Amir Taki in the house, so you could probably hear very loudly, probably no one else will get a word in edgeways. I'm anticipating that he's almost certainly going to be ruining the show. Ruling the show. Check out the Blue Yeti. How could we be without the Blue Yeti? Oh, Julia's here.
Oh, nice. Who can build the roads? I'm actually going to ask this.
Thank you.
I should also say that we are at Barclays Accelerator, accelerating their incubation, and their incubators are accelerating their accelerators, and it's all about traction and getting your A round to your B round. You've got to know all the buzzwords, otherwise you're never going to get your funding. And so, yeah, apparently there are some people from Barclays that are going to be here as well, which is kind of controversial. So don't mention LIBOR, okay? Don't talk about the fraud, don't talk about LIBOR. I'm just here to talk about edgy tech, yeah? This is funny.
What's the theme of the talk?
It's going to be about law, Ethereum and law, contracts, personal freedom, you know, anarchy shit. It's going to be about anarchy. No rulers. Oh, he's got his food as well. Food is well, he lives in a squat, so he just has to take what he can get. Yeah. Camping at Barclays is what's going on right now. So you're going to have to feed back, dear viewers, in the Q&A section, bottom left-hand corner of this video. I can't see it from my side. And then you can ask Q&A. I can't promise anyone's going to address anything in there. All people are coming in now. But also feed us back the sound as well. Tell us what the sound is like. Look, all these people coming in. And the media, open source media, that's us. All the people coming in.
The key to a successful presentation, obviously, is offer free beer.
Yes, this is the free beer. It's the only reason they turn up. Otherwise, they would never turn up. Yeah. And there as well. Yes. Just in case they lose their attention when they, because sometimes it gets pretty boring, right? And so everyone looks for the camera to say, oh, it's all right. I won't pay attention now. I'll just watch it on YouTube later. Turn up for the free beer. Watch it on YouTube later. Okay.
I need one seat.
So why don't you? Oh.
Why don't you introduce us on stage to everyone?
Well, I'm guessing that our compare will do that. I'm guessing we do have one sec. So. Hello. I'm not sure about. I'm not sure. Try it and see if someone. It's anarchy, mate. You can do what you like. It's anarchy. No more top-down authoritarian control. It's there to test you to see if you actually respect authority. That's the only reason they put those things there. See, it says here reserved, but it's just a test. It's a test to see whether or not you play by the rules. It's getting noisy in here now.
Anarchy at Barclays.
Okay. I'm going to switch microphones.
Chris, when you tweet out links, why do you need to use sound, do you? The sound is horrendous.
I don't want
Sorry, I didn't.
It's okay. Part of the process. You look great. Yeah, but now it's like sandwich. That's good. Oh yeah. Some people have the same way and they have I'll be back. Okay. Thank you.
Hey, go first.
Two more newcomers and we're stop.
We meet again.
This is the stage for the nation. Okay, let's get started. Good evening, everyone. I'm Stefan Schroll, the Chief Communication Officer for Ethereum. A couple of health and safety notes as usual. The emergency exits are on the back. That's also where you find the toilet. We're recording, so please turn off all your cell phones and put them on silent. Yeah. And please also try to keep a few seats free at the front so that the latecomers can just come straight in and sit down without crossing the path of the camera. So, tonight, first of all, I want to thank our sponsor, the Escalator, and in particular Simon Taylor and Oliver Stephenson, who are letting us use this beautiful space. It's the home of Techstars and Working Central, and I encourage you to have a look at what they're doing because it's really interesting. The second sponsor is Dev, the development arm for Ethereum. Dev is actually recruiting, so I was tasked to go and ask you guys if you know any good C++ developers in Berlin. In Amsterdam, we're looking at several Qt developers, 2 general C++ developers, and 1 Go developer. And in London, we're looking for communications people, so people with experience writing technical articles about decentralization, decentralized technology, cryptocurrency, and interacting with social media and things like this. So, I'm going to assume that everybody here knows what Ethereum is, but I'll recap in a nutshell. So, it's the web without the web servers. It's running on a completely decentralized infrastructure where your privacy is respected at all times. On this decentralized infrastructure, we have units of logic, which we call contracts, and they build programs that power those decentralized applications. Now, those programs' results aren't guaranteed to be exact by some centralized entity confirming whether or not the results are correct or whether something has happened. But instead, they're handled by this concept of decentralized consensus at scale, which is basically a voting mechanism. So if we all wanted in this room to get into consensus, we'll pretty much run a vote, and that's how this stuff works. So Because the programs that developers can build on Ethereum can be virtually anything, that also includes things like deeds transfer and titles, stuff like escrow, or running entire financial decentralized exchange. And those programs can also function completely autonomously without human control and trade between each other also completely autonomously. Now, because it sounded good and because we thought it was relevant, we decided to call these little programs contracts. And that had 3 unexpected effects. The first one, lawyers approached us wondering if they're going to lose their job. The second one is Ethereum starting being described as some type of cyber tyranny, where people would enter a contract that they somehow couldn't get out of because, of course, they're immutable. And the third one was that these decentralized autonomous organizations, which are completely transparent by nature, would somehow be created for evil. So I have a few examples here of what people say about DAOs. This is from a blogger called Brendan Pitts, and I'm going to quote some of his pearls of wisdom. It will be used for real-time assassination. Identity theft collective. How much is an identity worth? Let the DAC decide. Pay the collective to obtain fraudulent identities and incentivize human labor to do the dirty work. The more data delivered, the better the payout. This guy really has a moment. And my personal favorite is Coup Machine. Coup Machine, what about those pesky governance? Right? A variant on the real-time assassination market incentivizes all sorts of real-life physical interaction, like the change of major government bodies or the subversion and stalling of regulatory processes. I think we need to talk a little bit about that. So let me address some of those points in reverse order. So evil DAOs can and will exist. That's a fact. The same sort of panic occurred when the internet came up, especially as cryptography and encryption rose in the media, and we were constantly warned about the dangers of 2 individuals talking to each other over the internet in a completely secure way. What horrible things they would do. And history, in this case, does repeat itself. Meanwhile, we've kind of got used to little things like blazing fast video chat, having access to the world information at our fingertips, remote working, stuff like that, not very important. But in the process, what did happen is systems that were considered to be mainstay back then have become obsolete. And funny enough, the same people warning us about the evil of decentralization today just happen to be the same people that could very well become obsolete themselves pretty soon. What a coincidence. So the other thing is evil doesn't mean the same thing for everyone everywhere. For example, for some, the drug marketplace may not be such a bad thing, but for others, much less so. But let's play by random bits this blogger's rule and take an extreme example, which we can all really call child abuse. These sites do actually exist today on the Tor network using pseudonymous currency that you may have heard about called Bitcoin. Yet people are going to jail for these crimes, as they should, on a fully regular basis. And why is that? Well, because law enforcement agencies simply infiltrate this group using pretty low-tech techniques such as social engineering. They analyze the pictures. They do all sorts of tactics in order to infiltrate the groups and take them down. This also applies to decentralized autonomous organizations. You go after the users, pretty much. So that's that. But I think instead of looking at comic book villain type DAOs, as the said blogger was describing, if you want to see real evil, I think you need to look at what some people are calling evil corporate acts. It just happens to be something that seems to heavily benefit from being carried out in the complete dark. So one example I picked up from the internet was the Chevrolet Malibu scandal, where testimonies, I'm going to quote here in this case, show that it would have costed General Motors only $8.59 to employ a safer design for their cars. But the company decided it would be cheaper to settle lawsuits that arose from exploding gas tanks rather than preventing death and crippling injury from burn. So you cannot encrypt information on the Ethereum blockchain. In fact, it's very unlikely it's possible for other chains. So even in the event of an evil corporate DAC being created, it will be heavily handicapped by this transparency. And to quote one of our Reddit users, for that very reason, you're not going to see DAOs producing and selling gutter oil. Sunlight does indeed make for an excellent disinfectant. The third one, I'll skip this one. This is all. Okay, next slide. The second point was contracts as cyber tyranny. Now, somehow, because people in theory cannot get out of them, one researcher applied the argument that if somebody had been coerced at gunpoint to sign a message with their private key, that they would be indeed stuck in this contract and couldn't get out of because they couldn't prove that somebody had pointed a gun at them. So I think, first of all, if your argument includes the example of people being held hostage at gunpoint, I don't think you have a point. I think you're trying to make one. Second, customer protection can and will exist within systems like Ethereum, but in a manner that's both issued and entered voluntarily. If I was to trade options, for example, on the decentralized market on Ethereum, I could very well choose to do so through a decentralized broker who could in turn be insured by a very traditional insurance. It will be more expensive, granted, but it would be my choice. The fact that it's possible to write or to enter a contract, say for weather derivatives, through a single trusted contract that's backed by a single trusted data feed, doesn't mean that all users in the world are all of a sudden going to act like lemmings and line up to become victim of a single point failure mechanism. Instead, they probably will use some of the more secure alternatives out there, including baskets of data feeds, things like selling coins, or a mix of the two. And another point that's very important that many critics are completely dismissing is that the existence of one reputation system on Ethereum does not preclude the existence of another. One weather derivative system doesn't preclude the existence of another. In fact, the reason why people are thinking that way is a vestige of centralized society. On Ethereum, the existence of one system really generally does not prevent the existence of another. So you get to choose and build the system that you feel will be popular or that you'll feel comfortable, a social and economic system in which you feel comfortable to evolve in. You get to write your own. Maybe it's going to be immensely popular and you'll have so many friends, it'll be wonderful, and you'll be a part of society you approve of, or maybe it'll fail miserably and no one will join you. But at least you had that choice. And the last point was law as code. So I was chatting with a lawyer friend the other night in the room, and he pointed out that large companies entered complex agreements that had vagueness baked into them purposely, on the basis that the world can change rapidly and that wiggle room is actually desirable for both parties. In my view, it's completely fair enough. What I'd like to question, though, is have you ever tried to get a refund on your cable TV subscription or your gym membership? And if you ever tried to, or maybe you try to understand the terms of your travel insurance, for example. It's fine, I think, for two multi-billion-dollar companies to enter paid contracts because they do so on a voluntary basis. But for low-value contracts that we use every day, such as gym membership, the reality is that they seem, to me at least, being built to take advantage of the consumer rather than protect them. So technically, what you could cancel the gym membership, in practice, you cannot. So my view is that contracts should be readable, they should be in English, and the very fact that someone, and I've heard people say that for our meetups, the fact that they had to be written in the English language is that particular language was naturally subject to interpretation, which to me show how rigged this whole thing is. It's a fallacy to say that day-to-day low-value contracts should be subject to interpretation. There should be no such room. In fact, in this case, the interpretation only benefits one party, and I'll let you have a guess at who that might be. So, dear lawyers in the audience, we did not start Ethereum as a crypto law project. The purpose of Ethereum is to be a decentralized, generalized programming platform. The fact that law translates well into code is a good thing. In fact, that's not me saying that. That's a chap called Stephen Pally. He's an insurance lawyer for policyholders. And he's talking about using things like behavior-driven languages for unit testing to convert back into Ethereum code as smart contracts. I'm going to quote him. He says, turning this into passing test and working code will take some time. But this is what a programmer friend calls an iterative process. Maybe it's too ambitious, maybe not. But lawyers do have, but for lawyers to have continuing relevance and a voice, we have to start. So Stephen Pally is a smart guy because he doesn't see this technology as a threat. He sees it as what it is, and it's a tool. It's a tool to automate simple tasks, and to an extent, something that could help him become more efficient versus the other law practitioners, and therefore more successful. And in short, I will leave you with that thought. If you have to put half your population in jail because of your laws, you're probably doing it wrong. Thank you. We have 4 panelists, which I'll introduce very briefly. Julian Turensky, Of course, she's going to say she has a love affair with private property, the free market, non-aggression, self-ownership, and freedom. Bitcoin address ended with FU, which is quite telling. Amir Taki, there. Best known as a Bitcoin project developer and pioneering many open source projects, including Dark Wallet. Amir, there's some other one of your projects that you might be aware of.
Yeah, loads.
Loads. And Forbes listed Taki as one of the top 30 entrepreneurs of 2014.
I'm the squat billionaire.
That's unfair. Vlad is a researcher on the Ethereum proof of work algorithm, a thought leader on the asset hardness, reputation system, incentivized file sharing, as well as the semantic web project called Crypto Swats. Finally, last but not least, Peter Todd. Peter is a Bitcoin core developer, Bitcoin chief scientist, and it's fair to say that you're also on the Dark Web project, right? Anything else that people might know? Recognize?
Google me. Chief scientist.
Google me. All right, so we're gonna get started. Share, confirm. Questions?
I've done the air conditioning now because it's really chilly.
You're missing your sleeves, that's one.
I mean, yeah, still want a jacket.
Oh, nice hoodie. Well, it's alright. I can take my jacket off. Yours now.
Right, thank you everyone for joining us tonight. So I'll start with something simple, I suppose. We can do it in round robin order or whatever. If you guys feel like you want to answer, just grab the mic and speak. What do you make out of those legal contracts being fake on purpose? And for example, if I was to play devil's advocate, if you had a software development deal, it's really hard to tell what the software's purpose ultimately really is, even if you document every feature. It's really, really hard to tell what the ultimate purpose of the contract is. So isn't there vagueness required in contracts? And if so, why?
The legal system of the Anglosphere is a common law system. In common law, it's open to the interpretation of judges, so the body of law is set by precedents in court cases. But in mainland Europe, you have civil law, which is very, very specific. It's almost like instructions. And they're both different legal systems that have different trade-offs. So I don't think you can say like one is the better or the other. They all have different contexts where you might choose one or the other.
I mean, me personally, when I go and do a contract for clients, well, it'll be very specific on some things, such as, neither party is going to go off and patent the stuff that's developed. We'll go and have open source software and so on and so forth. As for what actually is going to get developed, usually we read that entirely out and then have a phone conversation and have a handshake. And if they don't like it, I think they should explain to the community why they didn't like what they got, and I can explain my side, and that's that. I'm never going to go up to a judge and say, we didn't get the right feature installed, and so on.
Yeah, I think some contracts benefit from having an ex ante kind of placement of a security deposit up, and have that security deposit revoked if something goes wrong. In some contracts, it makes sense to have ex post enforcement of the terms. For example, if you have a multi-million, multi-billion-dollar deal, you don't want to be putting up very large security deposits, and it's fine. It's probably better to have some lawyers and to deal with disputes as they arise. But if you have a small contract for a small value good, then it doesn't hurt to have kind of more automated means of enforcement. It's all about lowering costs, I think, in the end, in order to be practical. So sometimes it makes sense to use a smart contract, sometimes it makes sense to use a legal contract, sometimes it makes sense to use both. Kind of a smart contract and a legal contract.
I'm just here because of affirmative action. I have nothing to say. One of my best friend's mom, she works at one of the biggest law firms in Toronto, and her sole job is to go through contracts and find lines that are highly interpretable and win cases based on that. So, but I think that speaks to the bigger problem of the system, which panders to actors that have more power. So it's kind of like a byproduct of the corruption that we see, overall grand scheme of things. And I think here has a good point about transparency, and maybe we just need to, like, all of this technology in my mind is transcending current systems and trying to work out ways that are just a little bit better and more honest than what we have today, instead of thinking the framework that we're already part of. So I think the transparency and the community kind of awareness and peer-to-peer aspects. We're social creatures, so everyone wants a reputation to some degree. And I think if we focus more on that, then a lot of the other issues might kind of fall away naturally.
Before we go along, I'd like to say also that a smart contract isn't just a contract that doesn't have ambiguity in its terms. It's a contract that partly facilitates the execution of the agreement, either through enforcement or through just following the state. So it's not just about ambiguity, but it's also about self-enforcement, which smart contracts to some extent are generally said to have.
I mean, it's quite plausible that you could go create a smart contract where, in the default cases that are known in advance, there's no ambiguity of what happens. And then you go have, the final clause then, which is, well, if both parties agree that we don't know what to do, then we hand it off to a human.
Who is that human? Is that a court or is that something else?
Who knows? Depends.
Hopefully it's specified.
Yeah.
I mean, there's this concept of judge as a service, which a lot of people are saying, well, things will go to arbitration, especially with things like Ethereum. There's a lot of discussions around this. Do you believe that somehow we'll see independent arbitrators on the blockchain, in the blockchain, arbitrating versus between different parties that are
I suspect arbitration is kind of one of those concepts that sort of come out of, oh my God, Bitcoin can be multi-sig, we can have two parties and arbitrator. And they're kind of ignoring this very long legal tradition of arbitration, which is very specific in how it works and what kind of information it needs to be able to know. And I like using the example of Silk Road, where they found out kind of the hard way that there just wasn't enough information available to go and arbitrate these drug deals, frankly. Given that both sides are anonymous, and whatever information they go give up can be false. And from the sounds of it, they went and dealt with this problem by de-anonymizing the people being arbitrated, specifically to go give the arbitrator enough information to work.
They were kind of okay with that, because I read the comments of people who didn't get their drugs. Like, yeah, I got the drugs the first time, and the second time, and they knew what they were getting themselves into, because that's part of the risk. So I think that it's really easy to hypothesize and kind of plan for these things, but I think these alternative systems are going to arise very naturally, and I think they're all going to be very different. And that's the most exciting thing for me, because it's not going to be just one standard. I think it's going to be a whole variety, and people can choose to subscribe to what fits them.
And one thing also that happens with scammers is that, okay, in the first event when there's a dispute, you can't say who's being honest. But then what happens is later on you have 2, 3, 4 other disputes all involving this one party who, once you have these coincidences, you can be more sure that something went wrong.
You realize, of course, this strong AI will throw an enormous wrench into this whole idea. This strong AI will simply go as a computer program, create stories that sound like people had drug deals that actually legitimately went bad, with tons and tons of forum posts that look realistic.
But if some stuff's on the blockchain, it's going to cost something, and then maybe it'll be prohibitive.
Hard problem.
I think even without strong AI in the mix, we didn't need this really. It's for later.
I think.
What about people who say things like, well, I bought something, for example, on a decentralized Amazon or Open Bazaar, for example, and I received the goods, and it's not what I expected. Maybe it was a bunch of rocks rather than being this really cool iPhone I was expecting. Who do I turn to? And then what about the legal validity in the so-called real world, the world we currently live in? Is the jurisdiction that applies the one whereby the good was sold in, or does it apply to the system in which the good was sold in, which is everywhere since the internet? Okay? Or is it the jurisdiction of the person who received the good and is now trying to get his money back somehow?
I think we're like looking at this wrong, because there's this mindset where we're like, all I'm hearing now is just problems. Like, oh well, we can't do this. It's impossible, you know. But the thing to realize about these tools is these tools are not meant for things to replace things where you can already do the things pretty good. You know, it's like why the real use of these tools, these contracts we're talking about, is not for large corporations to be able to organize when they already have a legal system that works for them. It's for the places where we can't use those things. So when we're thinking about these problems, when we think about these tools, they are tools which they work. Maybe they don't work so fantastic as we expect them, or they have some things that aren't so perfect. But from there we can move forward. We already know the Silk Road, from the Silk Road, that a decentralized anonymous marketplace works. You know, it might not be the most ideal, but it does work, and we can only improve the things from there. That's.
You know, I think in summary, the simplest thing to say is what's most exciting isn't when you argue about what jurisdiction it is, but rather when you create your own jurisdiction.
Yeah, I also like polycentric law, which is a very interesting idea, because instead of having a homogeneous legal system where you need and when you start to get into multi-party binding contracts, then the only natural consequence of that is that you need to combine all the different legal systems to have compatibility. But the most natural form of agreement between people is between two people with a neutral mediator. And one of the oldest documents in human history is the Book of Hammurabi, which is like 1,500 years old, and most of it is dealing with contract law. Contract law is the basis for what has enabled this entire system to scale, because all the corporations can join together to create these bigger structures. And really, what's interesting about these tools is if you have a community of 100 people, or an organization of 100 people, they know one another, they can work with one another. But once you get beyond that scale, it becomes harder. So I really see these tools as enabling the organization in a very natural way between all different groups, from where we can't use the current legal system, where we can't, and we can disempower courts and judges and politicians and police for how we perform contract between each other. There are many different projects all around, even in Europe, where having the tools or the blockchain technology that can enable new forms of economic union or organization between humans, for where the current legal system we have is just either not feasible or too expensive or just not applicable. But now we have mathematical law, which opens up a new front. It's enabling a new market. That's how we have to think about these things, because there is a mindset in Bitcoin, and I see this with Open Bazaar as well. It's like, oh, we're going to replace eBay, but it's like people are using eBay and they're happy with eBay. And also, when we're talking about contracts and legal law, it's like people's already using the law. So the thing is to realize, like, what is the target market that's going to be using these tools, and then really focused on that and the use cases and the problems and the solutions and how we solve that. Yeah.
I think we're seeing the same thing with Ethereum, where people immediately, when they think about what can I do with Ethereum, they automatically try to recreate the existing system. So for example, with things like voting, the first thing people try to rebuild is
democracy.
Yeah, exactly. Democracy. What I find interesting about these technologies is they're a playground. It allows you to play with different systems that you may or may not agree with. And if one fails, that's okay. It'll evolve into another one until we reach consensus as to one that might work for that particular community. And that's quite a good point. Same thing for decentralized eBay. A lot of people want to rebuild decentralized eBay on Ethereum. And I think, well, our key advantage will be that we're slightly cheaper. It's not going to work. We need to find new ways to bring value to your user through this blockchain technology by leveraging what makes it really special and different, which is obviously this idea that transactions are immutable, The ledger itself is immutable, and the transparency of it, I think, is going to be very important, especially in the context of a DAO. Do you want to pitch in? Or?
I think, yeah, this is why I wish Preston Byrne was up here. But I think a lot of us are stuck, everyone lives in the now, and there's a framework surrounding that, the framework that we've grown up with and are used to, and it's really, really hard to break through it. And, well, obviously, we're still going to live in the now, but why don't we evolve that framework along with the way that the direction humans are going? Because we're not stagnant, and we're supposed to create some sort of progress in every realm of our realities, right? But instead, we're like evolving, but our framework is like holding us back, and this is a fence around us. But we need to like bring it with us, and that goes for the way we philosophize and the way we do politics, and not even just like this is a perfect quote, because if you don't like the framework, you don't even have to acknowledge it. Like with this tech, you could just go in your own direction, but it's really hard for people to think that way because these things don't exist and have never existed. So it's almost a fear, maybe.
Yeah, Buckminster Fuller's also, yeah, this is a cool quote of mine of things that I always remember, about how we change the things is not, you know, we can like advocate for our political blah blah as much as we want, but what's really going to change things is by putting solutions in front of the people that people want to use because they're objectively better. If we're talking about the healthcare or the food or whatever, you know, it's like get to work. And I like one quote from him where he's talking to his university students, and he's going like, "Oh, you'll wonder what it's like to be an astronaut. You'll wonder what it's like to travel aboard a spaceship. Well, let me tell you, you are all astronauts. You are astronauts aboard Spaceship Earth." And the thing with how we imagine these tools is we're very much influenced by like the things around us. That sometimes it takes a little bit more imagination or understanding about the depth of how these tools can be applied, because that's the one thing I see with all of these kind of political philosophies, especially the liberal democracies, is lacking in political depth. You know, when we're taught history in schools, the history is like shown as this ever greater and greater advancement towards enlightenment and human progress, towards greater democracy and bigger institutions. And we have this belief that we're taught this ideal of where large institutions form autonomously and that they represent and manifest the will of the citizens, and then there's like this clear separation between like public and the private sector, which represents civil society while leaving a safe space for NGOs and non-profits to operate. But the thing to realize is that the whole large institutions in the liberal democracy is more of a buyer's market, a free market statism, where different powerful actors have unequal access on this coercive force that they're able to purchase. It's not one person, one vote. It's more like different power groups with unequal votes. So when we start to think about these tools, which fundamentally I see Bitcoin as something which is bringing back the things, bringing back the way we live back to each other, between us. That's what peer-to-peer is about, and it's more something about the human spirit, about what it means to be human, the whole totality of the human condition, and all of the emotions within that. And so when we start to think about these tools, we need to start to think from the ground up. Like how do we recreate the state superstructure, but with technology, so it's more efficient, so it's faster and better. It's kind of like a technological utopianism, and that's also very common in Bitcoin. When you hear the people talking about self-driving cars or flying vending machines for convenience and other bullshit, but what really matters is about how we can be joined back to each other and that our source of our well-being and happiness comes from ourselves, not from somewhere else, some other group of gangsters, which always is going to represent their interests before yours. So the real mindset is thinking about, okay, between two people, how can these tools be used? Do they need to be used, or a group of people, or groups of groups, and you know, assemblages or cooperatives or big economic cooperatives that can scale up to millions of people? Because the thing when we start to talk, or when you start to delve into like the cooperatives like Mondragon Corporation, which is the 7th largest corporation in Spain, is a workers' cooperative which spans all different economic sectors, you know, from industrial production to finance to all these different things. And when you start to delve deep into the thing, you start to see, okay, there is limiting factors to how much the carrying capacity of this mode of organization for humans can reach. And the thing with the technology is it can greatly empower that to reach an even greater capacity. And it's always tempting to look around you and see, okay, there's like, oh, it's hopeless, there's like millions of people out there and nothing's going to change, you know, so how are we going to change that? But the thing is to look more within ourselves. That, you know, when you're 100 people can do a lot, and 100,000 people can do an incredible amount, and 1 million people, it's unbelievable. And the way that we're going now is, especially with the rise of ISIS, which is very much like an ideological movement. It is not a state as such, although it is a group of people that's oppressing people in that region. But it's very much this kind of ideological movement, which is something that's becoming more common. Like, to understand the philosophy of terrorism as this reactionary force to the superstructure of this globalizing superstructure, which, as we go towards the future, these kind of ideological movements are going to have to be given more recognition, because it's something that's happening now with the internet. The thing is to understand is that the coercive power of oppression has subjugated people, and that the human spirit has always remained underneath this, and that as you remove the apparatus of power, it allows the seeds of individual action to blossom and to bloom. And so this is where I see technology playing a role. It is an equalizing force, that everybody has access to this power. Not just like one group at the expense of another, and that's why Bitcoin is very interesting.
What I'm going to ask Amir to do is... I'm going to have to ask Amir to stop holding back and say that...
Can you just repeat what you said?
You missed that.
What is the beginning of that?
So it's interesting here because there's obviously an undercurrent of political opinions, I think, in everything we do. With Bitcoin, obviously, it's money. Money is by definition something that's political in nature. Do you guys feel that you're grounded in practicality as to what you're doing, or is it a matter of ideology, or wanting the world to be a certain way and trying to change it, so to speak? And if those technologies, it's a bit of a double-barrel question, I suppose, but if those technologies are really indeed building something else aside from the existing models of reality, why then try to evangelize it, why try to promote it? Since it seems to work quite well between individuals that already operate within this experiment.
You know, I think you can say that all these technologies, they really end up being based on truth. They end up being based on this notion that we can go and come to consensus on this truthful record of what happened. And whether or not you like what happened, that's up to you, but we can come to consensus on what happened. And the fact that some people think that's a very, very harmful thing goes, and I think shows that these technologies are very political. But they're also very political in a way that the controversy behind them is, I think, a very niche controversy. You know, this is a controversy among people who would prefer to be able to go lie about what happened. You know, prefer to be able to go and freeze accounts, prefer to be able to go and hide what software is or isn't backdoored. Prefer to be able to go and manipulate prices of things on exchanges. And I think the majority of us would rather all these things not happen, but there is a small minority of society who, their politics are such that they want all those things to be possible. Fortunately, those people tend to have a lot of money and a lot of influence, but that's how it is.
So, I mean, as far as political thought goes, I'm an absurdist, so I kind of think that wanting something for society is counterproductive to getting what you want, because it restricts your attention to only the kind of designs that you think will get you what you need, instead of actually paying attention to, what fundamentally is this technology and what are its characteristics in itself. So I try to be driven by kind of my observations more than what I want. I think Ethereum is a general purpose blockchain. I think that basically means that, kind of like Peter Ton said, it keeps a record, but it also lets you put little pieces of code in there that define how the state that the history keeps track of evolves. I think that has a lot of implications in terms of new information security properties. Well, it's not new information security properties. It's an old property called non-repudiation that is hasn't really existed in a provable way until blockchains. I think that using non-repudiation with a general purpose blockchain, you can have a lot of applications. And I'm kind of curious to see what they are. I'm not really curious to see how they can forward what I want, because I think that's kind of
In terms of politics, I'm an anti-state propagandist.
Second.
Yeah, always when I was on the internet, I would just see all the people on the internet going, "Oh, but who will build the roads?" And I was like, "What? Fuck the roads! Like, who will make the healthcare?" But then I went to America in Texas, and I finally understood why they say that. Like, wow, it's like the roads, like insane. And you have it's like some temple with big expressways. Like there's one big one 6 lanes, and then 2 other lanes coming in parallel on the side, and then you're driving towards this big thing, and there's like Jurassic Park when you're approaching the doors, and then there's these 2 other things coming, and they go around an 8th thing, and then 4 or 5, and they're looking this is enormous. How enormous is this? Yeah, and then there's another one right behind it. It goes on and on. It's insane. We have nothing like that in England. That's what I understood why Americans always go, who will build the roads?
The question is actually, what we're doing is we got a mic at the back. The lovely Jennifer will help you with the mic.
I mean, I think
She's really pleased with that.
How about a couple other things that I think we can talk about?
We can do that too.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that we haven't covered is the self-enforceability of contracts.
Exactly.
Money laundering.
You know,
Money laundering.
it's not self-enforceability.
Actually, let's let them finish on that point, and then we'll. So I'm not going to queue Julia.
So kind of the question is, so the question is,
for the people who want to ask a question, they can start queuing, my love. They can even hear you. So, any problem with that? Thank you.
This is our jurisdiction here. Right. So self-contracting.
There's a lot of discussion about how smart contracts are going to be self-enforcing, and there's not a lot of clarity about what that actually means. Now, for me, what it means is that people have to put up security deposits that the contract will take away if they don't abide by terms. But that's a really kind of restricted view of what self-enforceability maybe makes everyone put money up front, and that puts at risk. And there's no ex post type of punishment or enforceability. Everything is ex ante, everything is collateralized. But right now, that's the only way I really see smart contracts being self-enforced. It's kind of like the vending machine, right? You put in money and it has your money, and then you make a choice or ask for your change. And if you maybe try to break the vending machine, it'll take away your money.
You mean put both sides of the deal in escrow? So if I was to sell a car, I put the money.
Is that really the kind of self-enforcing contracts that we want to see, or can we see anything more?
Reputation, collateral, or insurance. That's how it's working now. Maybe there's more things in the future possible.
Yeah, reputation is a kind of collateral, because if you screw up, you lose it. Insurance, has problems on blockchains because you have a public reputation system determining what premiums you pay. Then if someone uses a civil attack against that reputation system, then you can commit insurance fraud quite easily. So I'm not actually sure how insurance leads to self-enforceability, but as far as I'm concerned, reputation is a security deposit.
I think the key thing with all this is ultimately we don't really quite know. And the only way we're going to really know is if we have the ability for end users, which is really a guy that's sitting in his basement on a computer, writing us some contracts and trying it out and seeing how it works.
About to punch them through the face.
Doesn't work. I'm sure.
I think we can pull that off. I mean, I've often said, like for instance, email spam would be really well handled by Ethereum decentralized finance organization. Whose goal was to hunt down spammers and then put assassination contracts.
But then people are just going to pretend to be dead to claim the thing on their assassination contract.
Yeah, we need better contracts then.
Better oracles about whether or not people are dead. Another thing that I think we should talk about before we go to Q&A is the whole idea of, is a smart contract a legal contract? What's the relationship between a legal contract and a smart contract?
And before we go there, in terms of reputation, the interesting thing about collateralizing an agreement with reputation is that it suggests that the reputation itself has value. That said, it's a non-transferable asset, which could be seen by certain entities as being less valuable than gold, called hard cash. One example we use all the time on Ethereum is this idea of chamas in Kenya, where one individual is vouched by 6 others, and the fear of losing reputation in front of his peers, his family, as part of a village where he lives every day, his neighbors that he sees every day, is such that the default rates on those microloans are incredibly low. And that is the type of stuff that you're working on. Okay.
Although, it's interesting also to point out some cases, if you can sell your reputation, that can actually make the whole system work. With Bitcoin, I did a lot of original work on it to come up with this idea of something called a fidelity bond, where you go destroy some Bitcoins to go make this pseudonym expensive to obtain. Now, if the pseudonym is, say, some Bitcoin bank, they'll do a bunch of transactions, they'll do a bunch of business. But imagine the person actually controlling it retires. Now, the moment they decide, you know what, I'm done, I'm going to go retire from this, from their point of view, their reputation's worthless going into the future, because they don't plan to continue business. But if they can sell that reputation, someone else continue on the business, then the reputation still is worth money at the moment when they might still have incentive to run with the money and screw everyone over. And in that case, having this marketplace for reputation, as bizarre as it sounds, could arguably be the thing that makes it work.
Reputation could be some type of altcoin issued by absolutely everyone in their own personal IPO representing.
I've done similar research on avoiding civil attacks, where you do some task for automation, and if you complete the task, you would be issued a token, and it would be basically, you can look at the market rate for that token, and you can basically figure out what the cost is for someone to conduct a civil attack and make these tests. So I think that transferable reputation can be useful, but only if it's reputation for not being an attacker. If it's reputation that tries to describe the person who has it, like say this guy's a good programmer, that guy's good at this, if it's like actually describing their skills or their personal characteristics, then transferring reputation is kind of awkward, right? If I earn reputation as a good researcher and give it to you, well, you're also a good researcher, but you might give it to someone else.
To be linking the same vertical. I couldn't inherit the reputation with somebody who was a car mechanic, because I have no experience in car mechanics. But between cryptographer, maybe there's something to be done there. Interesting.
I think those people have been standing for a while.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
so
let's
let's-
get
let's-
Hello. Okay. Can we do it now? Okay. Would you like to tell me your name?
Very good.
Okay. Is there anyone in there you would like to answer your questions?
No, it's a general question.
Okay, that's good.
So, firstly, on the reputation thing, the problem is almost one big score. That you build up a reputation and then use it for fraud, which pays all the cost of the reputation. Very common on eBay. I think the answer to this is in David Friedman's Machinery of Freedom, where he suggests that you have trust networks who all have a closed-in bond. When somebody in the network defaults, they can draw on the total bond of the entire thing, which means you can't actually have the amount test for equal to the cost of the car transaction without it actually being infeasible. I think Iceland can do this. The second thing was, who's going to build the roads? This is really why I came up here to tell you this, because during the Egyptian Revolution, there was a suburb of Cairo where they built on-ramps to the freeway, which was 15 meters above their slab, during the period when there was an outage of the state. So while nobody was paying attention, they spent literally $1 million worth of road construction, building flyover ramps onto the freeway, and then when the government came back, they brought around the building inspectors, proved that they were up to code, got them grandfathered in as legitimate buildings, invited the police to come to the celebration of opening them, and they answered the question, who's going to build roads, which is given the right opportunity, the people will do it, and will finance it. It's actually happened. See pictures of the ramps.
I love that story.
It's just amazing. So the question that I really have to ask here is, given that, that's a delicate question, right? So given that we're talking about infrastructure construction, the problem with infrastructure is usually that once it's constructed, somebody owns it and you get natural monopolies. So as we've seen with the formation of Bitcoin Foundation acting as a natural monopoly relative to the public base of Bitcoin, as we've seen with cartelization of miners, surely Ethereum will have the same problem, that you will get natural monopolies forming in things like reputation markets, and the structural impediments required to overcome the natural monopolies actually are substantially more valuable than the amount of tax monopolies can raise, i.e., you just end up with red-haired bastards running the entire system all over again. How do you fix it?
You know, this thing with natural monopolies, usually natural monopolies go and exist within a jurisdiction. And for example, for reputation markets, I really suspect we're going to find the natural monopolies do not exist because the jurisdictions where it makes sense are this enormous diversity.
Google is already there. It's called Google.
But in, you know, if I'm operating one type of market and you're operating another type of market, our reputation systems are probably totally incompatible in the sense that they're for totally different purposes. You know, so for there to be a natural monopoly between those two systems seems actually kind of unlikely to me.
Yeah, actually, the solution to the reputation systems problem that I'm most attracted to is something called personal reputation systems. Because when you go about through your own life, you give people reputations for yourself, for your immediate self-interest. You're not trying to build a public good. You're just managing identities for yourself. I think that personal reputation systems for personal identity management are going to end up being, I mean, it's not going to solve all the eBay problems, but I think it can definitely solve some of the problems of public reputation, especially when it comes to dummy accounts. Personal reputations are inherently Sybil resistant because you're not going to make friends with 8 Sybils.
Who in this audience knows what the word Sybil means in these contexts?
Yeah, excuse me. So a Sybil attack is a Sybil is like, I think there's like a movie and a book where this woman has multiple personality disorder, and that's where the name comes from. But it's an attack on a reputation system or a network where you introduce many nodes that are all controlled by yourself, and you pretend that you're many individuals. So in a reputation system, the way it looks is I'll introduce 20 nodes, and each of them say that this one node is a really great guy, and then you use that good reputation gained from the attack to scam some people.
Yeah, I think in short, it kind of boils down to the problem that on the internet nobody knows your dog.
Yeah. Or fridge trading illegal weather derivatives. It's possible.
I really like that. I'm just absorbing information now, but couldn't a big company, just like what happens with concert tickets, start buying up reputations because they have centralized wealth, and then keeping them and then like selling them at extortionate prices?
Well, in the models where buying and selling reputations make sense, what you're really doing is just buying a deposit. It's the reputation itself is a crazy enough fungible thing. It's just a certain number of bitcoins. It means that there's a market price of these bitcoins, and if you go screw someone over, like running with the money that's deposited at your bank, well, we can figure out a decent price for the reputation. We can go prove that you committed fraud. Therefore, we can go figure out how much do you lose by committing fraud. Well, is the opportunity to commit fraud and gain bigger than what you lose? And it becomes this nice, simple, binary mathematical thing.
You can also calculate what the cost of a Sybil attack would and nodes would be, given that each one requires one of these reputations.
In your corporation, this example, all they're really doing is just buying up commodities. Like, all right, I'm going to go attack the world by buying a lot of sand, and then I'm going to form remember the mark notes saying. Wait a second.
Yeah, Vinay, thank you. It's a cool question. And about all the monopolies and industry and stuff, and I don't know. And yeah, also it's nice to see all the audience is so diverse and very different. Like, there's, in the Bitcoin ones, is sometimes a bit too many just dudes with shirts and suits. No offense, shirts and suits.
Okay, can we move on to the next question? Everyone happy? Thank you. And you are?
Oliver.
Oliver.
I guess my question is a more fundamental question in case Ethereum really gets successful and takes over the world. And I'm saying that because like the microcomputing or the computing revolution we had, it all started with like homebrew clubs, homebrew computer clubs, just like this, and it took over the world. So I guess my question is, you're trying to build a system based on consensus. Now, how would you build into this system of consensus a way for people to dissent? Because it's really dangerous if the whole world, not just transactions, gets ruled by consensus. Because the consensus can be disillusioned, as we have seen in history. How would you have room in a really strict technological thing where people can still dissent?
It's independence and autonomy that we need to push towards.
Keep in mind that, when we talk about consensus, again, all we're talking about is consensus over what happened. This is like saying that we run real risk with history where you can't dissent on what happened in history. And, well, sure, you can go say that something didn't happen that did. You can argue an interpretation, but ultimately, having this sort of so-called video camera of what happened, recording what happened in a public place, which is what Ethereum blockchain is. It's a public place. There's not really much harm in that. Now, what's built on top of it is, I think, where the harm could come out. And I think at this point, we don't really know what's going to be built on top of it. I mean, within Bitcoin, for instance, it's it's kind of a battle, as in, well, do we allow Bitcoin to have blacklists? Do we allow Bitcoin to have mechanisms for funds to be frozen? And of course, all these things would make Bitcoin look very much like the banking system we already have. Which to me kind of says, well, this isn't really a big risk because we can't do much worse.
Yeah, the other thing, by the way, can you guys hear me? Because I think my mic has been The other thing regarding consensus is when we talk about consensus at scale, we talk exactly like Peter said on what happened. So this is the result of calculations that are already taking place on the network, the output of those contracts. Now, that doesn't mean that what we're advocating is that every voting mechanism, the higher level voting mechanism, the stuff that is nothing to do with the miners or the machines that participate in the network, the stuff that you and I would use to, for example, vote for a new president or vote for a new company owner or anything of the sort, wouldn't necessarily be driven by consensus. The model that you want to implement, you write it in code. So it's like saying, what sort of political model could you build with Java? I don't know. You build it. You tell me. Anything is the answer. So we're not advocating every voting mechanism will be based on just who has the most votes or anything of the sort. In fact, we're not advocating anything. Technically, Ethereum is entirely featureless. All we're providing is a programming language of which the results don't have to be trusted in. So
I've actually got a technology I'm working on called tree chains, which in a sense is kind of like Ethereum minus programming language. Tree chains is nothing but a public record of statements. That's it. If you want to interpret a programming language on it, you could interpret that within tree chains, but that in turn would be your own choice.
And the other thing, just to conclude on that, because this has been coming back to us, and you saw in the some of the critics that were addressed towards us, it was a little bit conflicting. There's a dichotomy between critics already just on the legal side. From a political point of view, we've been accused of being, I don't know, everything from communist to techno-fascist, I think, one day, something called that, and everything in between. But the you know we're you know, technology is political. Ultimately, it's a programming language. It's what people will build, and then the difference with the sort of the system we currently live in, and Peter alluded to this, is I'm born in England. I have to follow the jurisdiction of England, or do I? This provides a way out, and it can be anything you want to build.
Okay, cheers. Thank you, Oliver. Next question. And you are?
David, hello.
Hello, David. And your question?
Yeah, my question is about transparency and the political neutrality of Ethereum. Particularly, if we just take law, at the moment, people are looking at contracts and trying to understand what the hell a particular clause means. In Ethereum, the way the incentives work, there's a disincentive to make literate contracts. In other words, at the moment, I was talking to Stefan about this, and it goes on, it's possible to create legally legible contracts which are also code, but that requires highly literate programming rather than very efficient or functional programming which most people can't read. The way the cost incentives in terms of gas between contracts works is likely to incentivize highly condensed, efficient code over easily understandable human code. Do you think that's a long-term problem in terms of what Anil was talking about, in terms of people using tools like Ethereum and not having this superclass of priests that are able to do the coding that replace lawyers? And similarly, do you think there are other built-in value systems into Ethereum that make it not quite as neutral?
Right. It's applicable to everything on Ethereum. It's true that if you were to want to have your contract, which for those who are not necessarily familiar with it, every time you take an execution step in a program on Ethereum, it costs one gas. One gas has some sort of value that you define as a buyer, as the executor of the said contract. So there is therefore an incentive to a certain extent due to market forces to write contracts that are as efficient and as you said, condensed as possible. However, that's not exactly the case. The contracts can't be condensed in the higher level language that we make available to everyone. Quite simply because they're already compiled down to what we call Ethereum code, which is an ultra-condensed version, very likely completely human unreadable. What you're describing here, I think, is how do we know as non-technical users that the contract that we're looking at says it will do what we say it does? So it's a bit like saying, why do you give your credit card number to Amazon? Why do you trust them with that? Well, they don't know. Maybe they're going to use it to buy themselves some very nice paintings or something like that. So why would I send money to a contract? Well, by definition, you already trust the contract to do what it says it will. Now, we fully understand and we see that not everyone, in fact, probably no one, will decompile the code that's in the Ethereum platform and subsequently try to understand exactly what it does and confirm as it did, because that would be ridiculous, of course. So what we foresee, though, is it's possible to have this binary signature of the bytecode once it's been compiled down to EVM code to be published on something like GitHub. There's actually a website called Minshop that already does this. It's full of Ethereum contract, they're in plain text. It writes a binary signature, and if you want to check that the contract you're talking to indeed does what it says it does, you just check the two and it matches them for you. Now, even this, although it's very high level, is still very hard for an end user to use. So if you look at some of the prototypes of the Ether browser, the tool that you're going to use to address or contact apps, you'll see at the top right there's a little green check marks, and sometimes there's a little progress bar that says, from don't trust this thing, it was dodgy, to all the way to 20 different independent auditors have reviewed this code, matched the bytecode, and can guarantee you this is A-OK. If you have 20 people that are making a living out of auditing this type of code, you can be guaranteed that it will indeed do what it says it does. That's how we address that problem.
But isn't that like a priest? Sorry, isn't that like a lawyer?
If you have a question, you want to come over here with the microphone? And everyone can hear you.
So the question was, isn't it like having a lawyer? No, it's a new economy. It's an economy of auditing things that are in the blockchain, and not all of them will be worth auditing. Suppose not all of them will be financial protection, networking, or whether it does go in as we expected or not, it doesn't really matter. You need that extra layer of security. If you're going to put it in the blockchain, you want to transact with, say, another bank or something like that, you probably want people to edit that code, and that's okay. So there'll be different level of requirements in terms of the level of audits that take place.
You know, and I think a key difference between that and a lawyer, and I will admit there is a lot of similarity too, is that in the legal system, first of all, be a lawyer, you end up in reality needing to be regulated. You know, you need to, for a lot of people, be given access to that title. And even in cases where, say, you're self-representing, in reality, the information you need to know to be able to effectively do so is stacks and stacks of case law. It's very hard to get access to the tools you need to do legal research. And there's a lot of barriers that just don't exist compared to going on the Ethereum website and looking at the API documentation. You know, that's kind of a skill set that a very large number of people have, and a very large number of people have learned how to do themselves. I mean, I personally, you know, taught myself computer programming, and I'm certainly not alone in that.
Actually, what I found super interesting is that all of a sudden people say, oh, well, we really need to know if this does what it says it does. And I bet that very few of you out there are actually doing that for the tools that you use every day, on which you rely 100%, including your financial history, your financial reports that you may have on Dropbox, things like that. We rely on these things all the time. And we trust the centralized organization to do the right thing. You have 5,000 employees, and not one single day will you have one employee working on the wrong side of the bed and deciding that he had enough of his job and wipes out half the database or steals your stuff and puts it on BitTorrent or something similar. The fact that technologies like Ethereum force people to start thinking, what am I trusting? Or where is my data? I think that in itself is very
sorry. I think it's a bit lame, really, to say, oh yeah, like, I don't understand programming when, like, it's like resources all over the internet and it's open source. I don't know what goes on in the legal system. I can never access that or any of these proprietary systems. Open source, you have the code and you can learn to write code. So it's like, we have the power.
Would a good comparison be like we used to have food critics, and now we have Yelp, and Yelp has a reputation, and the more you review, and the more reputable your reviews are, the more you're trusted. And I mean, that's, well, it's on the central platform, but the reviews are decentralized, because anyone can do it if they're willing to put time into it. And there's whole websites who give rewards and money for this. So this would be a whole career opportunity for people who are willing to put the skills to use.
Okay, David has a follow-up. Yeah. Okay.
I agree that it's lame to complain about it. It's fantastic that we've got the power now to open source for a lot of legal technology. I just do feel that some of the incentives aren't quite there. So I think there still will be an incentive for a priesthood to emerge who are more efficient and more. You might be able to prove and make certain links between the code, but the emergence of an elite class of experts is largely based on their reputation and their expertise, their efficiency in some sense, and transparency and openness. I think it's a different class of reputation.
I completely disagree there. I completely disagree. You're opening up a whole new job market to a lot of people. It's not just reviewing contract code, because that's really Ethereum specific. It's the making the entire job market more granular, so people can have spot-on jobs where they can go and decide to take a task on, which obviously in the initial days will be probably based on computer work, as you know, that's the current way of working remotely. But as systems that actually analyze what's going on in the physical world, such as weather sensors or whatever, become more and more mainstay, I think we'll find that a lot of jobs can actually be completely decentralized. People don't require centralized authorities to employ them, and job security isn't guaranteed. That's true, but neither is it today.
So you can get the tools. There's like one tool called Pure Data, and you can like program music using like graphics really cool.
Yeah, that one. I think that's a cool job.
No, but I'm saying that, like, you know, it's like it's not writing code. We can make tools, we make the tools better. I used to work on video games, and we were making tools for like non-programmers to be able to just join the logic bricks and make games, and you can go even higher level and just like make really cool games without needing much.
There's a great tool, and I think this will end the question. Sorry, but this is so awesome. I have to talk about it. There's a company I saw that on TED that's letting user fold protein. And folding protein is basically one of the ways we're intending to cure cancer. So it's pretty damn important. At the moment, we've used distributed grid computing systems like Bond to have machines constantly try all potential options and see if it works or not. What they found is that by gamifying the process and issuing tokens of value, believe it or not, which could be cryptocurrencies, humans were infinitely better at folding protein than, even though they're incredibly more efficient in terms of computing power than computers were. And that itself, for me, would be a wonderful job to be participating, to be rewarded for helping a medical cause without having to be a doctor, simply by making the task so granular and perhaps maybe a little bit repetitive, but you could have a more job.
So as a follow-up, as a response in fact to that, although I agree actually there will be a pre-super class, I think it will be a far wider class than the current lawyers. I think a major difference between a developer answering and a lawyer answering is a response from my lawyer is quite often it's a grey area. It might be this, it might be that, it might go back or it might go to a high court. With a developer they say, I don't know, or this will happen. If they don't know, they should be honest about it. In law, it's a grey area.
Yeah, quite familiar with that. I completely agree with you. But we'll have the answer for you if you just sign us a check for 24 grand.
That's like developers.
Okay.
Maybe like developers, but not like developers.
Next question, I think it's David, and you are.
Okay. First, I just want to say that the 60 million Ether launch was actually one of the most significant events in finance since Bitcoin adoption. For a very, very rare occasion that almost $15 million has been raised without an investment bank, without venture capitalists, without government subsidy, and by everyday people that just decided they wanted to contribute to that. So that was such a significant financial event that kind of went under the radar for the significance of it. My question is how was there any regulator pickup? Did it go completely under the radar from the regulators when such a significant amount was raised? And also, how long do you think it would take before they recategorize this away from a product and towards a security?
Right. Well, you answered your first question by asking the second. It's a product. It's not a security. It doesn't give you a share in Ethereum. And there are no Ethereum shareholders. Profit organization. There are founders who hold Ether, just like some people have purchased Ether or were assigned Ether as early adopters of the technology. It's not a security, it's a product. Now, how long will it take regulators to reclassify a product as a security? The answer is I don't know. Maybe you should ask the regulators.
It's notable that if security law was implemented on Ethereum, you'd simply run the contract and then you have a conclusion as to whether or not Ethereum was breaking security laws. Of course, instead, it's a gray area.
Okay. Thank you, Simon. And last but not the least.
My name is Patrick. Everyone. I was wondering, has anyone thought through what it would take to execute large projects, whether they be computing projects or engineering or whatever, via Ethereum, and what tools would be required to get the sort of general population on board with that? And if you haven't, maybe a thought experiment for everyone.
Well, for truly large projects, we need blockchain scaling. Another one thing that we could consider is succinct proofs that something took place. So you might not include everything on the blockchain, but you could include a proof that it took place on the blockchain, and everything else could be off-chain. Those are a couple things.
Yeah, so I'm sorry, I'll let Peter.
I mean, I think it's good to remind people that what Ethereum is something where everyone participating in the system, the first approximation, runs the code. So right there you get massive inefficiency compared to just paying some guy with a computer or a couple million computers to go run the problem for you. What Ethereum is good at is when you need to come to consensus over what should happen, not when you need what should happen to do so efficiently. Now that's not to say that there are very clever ways where you can go say, compute this problem for me and report back, and that would be the input to subcontract, where then you might, for instance, get paid for it. But that essentially requires, what we like to call moon math, where you're somehow kind of proving to the world that you ran a program without actually giving them the program with steps or any of that. And that's a long story. I don't even begin to think I can understand how that works, but I'm told it can be done, so we'll see more.
He's saying that, but he's probably going to be the one finding a solution for it.
I mean, you usually have a circuit and make it a bunch of linear things, and you have a linear hash function, and then you throw them all together. That's how I explain it.
It helps if you're working on a monitor with green text and a black background. It's kind of fall a bit.
Patrick, was the question how zero-inch mass adoption or something like this?
Well, yeah, I mean,
Sorry, can you speak in there?
I mean, if we're seeing it as like a mass adoption economic tool, I mean, most people aren't really interested in hedging currency trades. They're interested in having a job to do, and then just sit at a computer and do a job and then go home. Like, that's what mass adoption looks like to me. So.
Sounds boring.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is it. I mean, I was thinking of just asking a question like, would mass adoption just ruin the whole thing? Because I can imagine just like a bunch of people like hooked up to the matrix, like folding proteins all day. Like,
sounds awesome.
Yeah. Where can I sign up?
But yeah, like most people aren't really that forward thinking. They just want to turn up and do a job and go.
No, absolutely, you're absolutely correct. So I think Ethereum is a bit like TCP/IP. We're talking about it here because it's interesting. It's new, just like TCP/IP used to be. Ultimately, it's a protocol. People shouldn't have and shouldn't need to care about it. Just like when they watch pictures of funny cats on the internet today, they don't need to care about TCP/IP. What that developers, who are the real stars of the show, need to do is find new avenues to either reward their customers or monetize their applications or whatever they want to do, but they need to find new ways of thinking about this business model. And Peter Todd is absolutely right. We should only use the Ethereum blockchain for consensus achievement, so to speak, and everything else. When it's storage, we have a protocol called Swarm, which is a bit like BitTorrent. We also have a protocol called Whisper, which is a bit like Telehash, which allows for high-speed messaging, again, encrypted end-to-end peer-to-peer messaging system. So not everything goes on the Ethereum blockchain, and yes, clearly it is important. That's one of the strange, the second one would be my question.
Okay, thank you. Can you have 2 more questions in here? How many questions do you guys have? Good.
Infinite.
Okay, you are.
It's already like in there.
I'm Jerry. I just have a question for each of the panel, and I think there was a mention of Ethereum, the blockchain, as kind of a public space. I'm kind of interested in what the panel thinks, and each of you, whether is a blockchain public or private, and perhaps you might want to expand on your definition of public and private. I'd be very interested in starting this video.
Start mine? Yeah. No. What's a private blockchain? If it's yours and you're running all the servers that are keeping it secure, then it's meaningless because you're wasting all this computing power to protect something that you could destroy yourself at any time. So that makes no sense to me. You might as well be using a centralized server.
Okay, so what I mean is it a public space in which I mean, there's this notion of public and private, let's say in terms of our homes, where if I step outside and anyone can take a picture of me, if it's taken in my home, then maybe I can do my objective.
Is it like that ocean question? If no one knows the ocean is the public or private.
Good sort of thing.
Well, you can also go talk about public and private in terms of privacy. And I mean, like with dark wallet, simple way to describe it is we go take a public blockchain that's fully transparent, and we give you a really good disguise to wear while you're on this public blockchain. And even though what you're doing is public, who you are is still unknown.
So is it public or private then?
Both. It is your option.
Yeah, third definition.
Like private, I mean, private in terms of privacy. Like financial transactions, private, because I believe in the privacy of financial transactions. I believe I have that right. But I'm not sure. Still not sure about your question. Are you talking about public good or is the blockchain property?
Well, if the public blockchain is about transparency, then I'm just trying to work out whether there is a.
So like, what is the ethic of the blockchain? Yeah. You saying is the ethic of the blockchain?
Is it a public space where everything should be transparent?
Yeah, I think you're trying to imply something.
Or should you be private only? In which case, is there conflict between, let's say, trying to have pseudonymous identities or anonymous identities on a public blockchain?
Do you not like privacy? Do you not like privacy?
Keep in mind, there's a huge range of this stuff too. I mean, it may be that I want to go and prove to Julia that I want to pay her. In which case, from that perspective, yes, this is a public transaction, but only between me and her. Or maybe I want to go show Amir that I paid her because we're having a dispute. But you don't need to know that.
Yeah, or maybe you're taking donations and you want people to know what you're using the money for. It could be both. I mean, that's the beauty of it. You can utilize it. You can almost utilize it soon, hopefully, in a very private way or not.
The CEO of Kaspersky wants everyone on the internet to have an internet passport, because we need to be transparent with each other. But this kind of vision is like the government's having more privacy and the people having more transparency, but it should be the other way. The power that needs transparency so that it can have oversight by the community of people around that. But with each other, that we can have our privacy, because the privacy, one of the main things about Bitcoin is not that it's faster or cheaper or more efficient transfers. In fact, Bitcoin transfers are more expensive than what we already have in the financial system. Bitcoin transactions are subsidized to about $30 each. What makes Bitcoin unique is that it's uncensored. The privacy is a large part about having free speech, because you can do whatever you want. Just tell me your name and address.
Okay, I think I'll rest my question then. Thank you.
Okay, cool.
Thank you. And next one, you are.
My name is Peter, and my question is about the relationship between Ethereum and Bitcoin. Can you tell us about that?
We hate each other.
Are they in any way competing, or will they fuse at some point in a way?
I want Ethereum to experiment with a lot of cool ideas, and then the ones that work, we're going to steal them.
No, you're not being backwards compatible. How are you going to do contracts with state on a UTX treasury?
We've got ways.
To answer that, I think for me, I see Bitcoin 2.0, since some people are calling us that, as a fallacy. I think Bitcoin 2.0 is the version that comes after 1.9. Not as we're going to develop it. What we're developing is a general Turing complete ledger. And we're very fascinated about the impact it could have on something like the decentralized web.
Okay. Anyone else? You're fine?
I will go say, I mean, in general, as much as people joke about anonymity, after all, you've got actually, Bitcoin people are remembering me here.
Yeah, that's why I
invited
those people that I hate. The Bitcoin sticker on my laptop sort of gives the answer.
So,
okay. And you are?
Yeah.
I can.
I may mention that here in England we have common law, and case law is how we write our law. We write our law by engaging legal disputes and rules made on them. So I guess my question is, should we all be getting into legal disputes regarding things we put on the blockchain in order to assure people that, say, proof exists?
So I think this is actually a great question and something that hasn't been addressed on this panel, even though we should have been talking about Ethereum contracts and the law.
State thinking.
Well, for example, the classic example of a smart contract is a vending machine. But so you have a legal contract between the vending machine's owner and operator and the person who uses it, and then the smart contract is kind of part of the legal contract that's executing some of the mechanics. I think we're going to see that used a lot, and we're going to have smart contracts integrated into legal contracts as a part of the legal contract. But we also have this thing where no one necessarily owns or operates a smart contract. So if you're doing business with a vending machine that has no owner or operator, then what can the legal system, like, is the vending machine itself a party to a legal contract? Well, probably not, because a party to a legal contract has rights and responsibilities, but the vending machine is just code in this case. And it can't be told what to do, it can't take more responsibilities, or it doesn't, the same rules don't apply to a piece of code in a sense, because there's no real enforcement. So I think that we're going to see smart contracts part of legal contracts. We're also going to see standalone smart contracts that act as parties to contracts. They're party to the smart contract, but they can't be party to the legal contract.
I mean, keep in mind there have been actual legal contracts that ended up having computer code in them. And they would go say things like, we shall allocate the water usage of the Colorado River according to the formula in, program yada yada yada. And when you actually evaluate that contract, well, go hire some experts, go sit down on his computer, put in the data, run the program, and certify, yeah, the program spat out, you're now allowed to, based on weather patterns, draw 1,000 gallons a minute of your water usage. And that's a real world example where someone has actually created a program and referenced it in legal doc. Equally, you and I could go say, all right, we're going to enter in a contract where we shall act according to this thing on the Ethereum blockchain. And that spits out, whatever that happens to be.
Yeah, and if you want ex post punishment for people who enter in some state in a smart contract, you're going to need to have that be part of a legal framework, at least in the short term, because we don't have decentralized armies of drones to enforce smart contracts.
Yes.
Equally, of course, you may have a smart contract that references the legal world, where if you convince some court to be willing to actually digitally sign their legal, their legal records, well, the smart contract itself can go take that information in the form of digitally signed information and act upon it.
And if you don't go down that legal route, then it destroys your security deposit.
Publishes your baby pictures.
Can I just add that it's not just contract law. We need to be aware there are other branches of law like negligence. Let's say that vending machine malfunctioned and killed someone. Legally, the one who programmed that could be held to be negligent, gross negligent in programming that thing. So it's not just contract law.
Just so you know,
there's lots of things.
Remember, it won't be on recording because it has to be. And you're going to go off.
Sorry, just to follow up. What I was really talking about was things that we accept to be true, like consensus on blockchain. How long do you think that would take to be something that the courts recognize? And is there anything we can do to speed up? Like I was suggesting, it gets to legal disputes where it all depends on, say, a item that was entered in the blockchain at a certain point, or you're working with a tree chain, which is statements, timestamps, and something like that is exactly necessary before we can have faith in, say, our legal systems to recognize what we're doing.
Again, keep in mind, we could go and create a contract today that involves the Ethereum blockchain. And I'll bet you if we did, and it came up in court, they'd be more than happy to say, yeah, no, you agreed to this output of this computer program. Done. And it has precedence. It is not actually that novel. This whole blockchain part is, but the idea of delegating a legal contract to a computer program is not new.
Okay, you all know, yes, like a bit of follow-up as well.
I'm finding this discussion really interesting, but there's a soft spot identified
like our legal system, would we given access, or would you given access to many of the things happening on the blockchain? And especially with what should
Yes, can you talk up because I can't hear you.
oh, sorry. Like with what involves like, crime investigation. Say a lot of the things we've been talking here about legal disputes involving financial transactions and things of the sort. Probably some things like community reviews and stuff like that would aid in trying to solve that. What happens when two individuals enter and create fake identities and then just make a transaction that is clearly becomes part of a kidnapping, abduction, whatever that is. And I mean, how, or is it even possible that then our legal system can access any of that data? I mean, it's a bit of a conundrum here.
Well, keep in mind that fundamentally all the Ethereum blockchain has is facts about what happened. You know, and if some contract ends up being entered into kidnapping or something, well, what's on the blockchain is just facts about what happened. And if the legal system wants to try to apply its jurisdiction to that, well, I'd suggest that do the old-fashioned thing and go track down these people and
have them fake identities. How?
You know, if you're talking about kidnapping, there is a very real identity of the person being kidnapped.
No, I mean, I'm talking about like a financial transaction, like a ransom, whatever kind of amount is paid involved in something, and then you have two people enter.
I mean, they probably use cash in the first place because that's more anonymous. But if they were on the blockchain, then they're.
We're doing a good job to make it just as anonymous.
I mean, they're protected like by all this privacy, and you know they could have to say, yeah, we now transfer you the money.
I mean, this is just a standard, I think, trade-off where, you know, society has realized over hundreds of years of oppression and bad governments that we cannot give governments too much power.
And that's okay. I'm not talking, and I'm not advocating for a centralized system. I'm just like trying to enter. Well, I'm really just finding the discussion about like soft power and legal system entering.
Well, the future is a lot more criminal.
It's a dangerous way of thinking because that kind of thinking is why we have, you know, this autonomous spying on us now, right? Because what if people have privacy? What if they have tools to utilize crime? What if it's easier?
Well, as I said, I'm not advocating for any centralization. I'm just.
But that's the kind of thinking that does inadvertently advocate for it. And at some point we have to say privacy and liberty can be a scary thing, but do we sacrifice that for something even worse?
Don't sacrifice. I'm just like, I'm not actually asking you to give me an answer, just like I'm interested in your thoughts about if it would even be possible for the legal system to kind of.
I think ultimately, if Ethereum, indeed any blockchain, is going to be valuable, you try very hard to make it as impossible as possible. I mean, I was talking earlier today about how these systems sort of create this binary option, where either the system works, and true statements say true statements, money given to someone is actually transferred and can't be taken back, or it's being attacked and destroyed. And if you're some government who says, we want to go and stop this legal contract, or even more simply, well, someone paying a ransom in Bitcoins, well, now our only options is to either do nothing and, you know, use non-digital means to deal with this, or we go destroy all of Bitcoin. And our goal, you know, as developers is to go and put them in that position, because anything else doesn't give you something interesting compared to what we already have. You know, the banking system is very good at taking money back, and that leads to a lot of problems too. And we want to go and give the world an option where you can choose to participate in a thing where that's not possible. You know, we understand fully that there are downsides to this, but in the same way we understand fully there are downsides to free speech. The upsides are worth it.
But
Thank you for your answer.
last two questions because I can see this queue reforming. Consensus.
Yeah. Just kidding.
That's a good question.
He's gonna ask how we scale, because he always asks.
No, I'm not asking that question. I already know. I'll talk that, but my first question here is about money laundering. Is there actually going to be such thing as money laundering? Once you've got
the money laundering is like there is a document by a University of Florida professor of law. Are cryptocurrencies a super tax haven? And he's talking about how corporations use offshore companies to avoid paying tax, and the government's tried to fight against this by fighting against the jurisdictions, but didn't have success. So now they changed their tactic. And so what they do is they centralize more power so that's what they mean when they say capitalism for the rich, socialism for the poor. And so what the government's doing in response is like centralize more power in fewer financial institutions, and in return turn those fewer institutions into agents of the tax authorities to help them collect tax, to help them report on income. And it was talking about how now this new process is happening where cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin can help individuals to avoid tax. So you have this inversion before where the individuals pay tax and the corporations avoid tax. Now where corporations pay more tax and individuals pay less tax. And the thing to realize about the states is that the states tax the people through inflation, which Bitcoin is deflationary, well, after 2030, and also tax through taxes. And not only does it like contribute massively to state power, but it enables them to control who can accumulate wealth. So that's why like money laundering is the future, like it's the new norm.
Would you say money laundering as it is at the moment, and then would you say that would be the equivalent of privacy moving forward?
We need to launder our money. Like.
What I mean is with dark wallet and a lot of other things you're working on, it's automatically mixing coins and keeping things private.
Yeah.
So currently in the existing financial system, people pull out money laundering. Is there?
Yeah, we need to take that term back and say proudly. We buy drugs online, we launder money.
That's great. Everyone hates tax.
Someone's stop saying that.
That's what Bitcoin's really about. It is.
Okay. Let's take another question.
Best for last. So the obvious state response to all this stuff is identity escrow. Right? There are things along the lines of Clipperchip where unless you have a government-issued identity escrow, it's illegal for you to possess a set of cryptographic keys for these systems. Correct? The escrow role of government court systems has come up every time we've gone through a new wave of crypto adoption. Clearly, eventually, the IRS or some equivalent entity is going to be like, yeah, we love all these trading systems. We just want true names on file. You can be anonymous until such time as you break the law. And then for everybody's security and privacy, you can come to federal court with a warrant. We'll break the identity escrow code, and then we'll let you know who somebody is. Right? Provides with all of your accountability, prevents all kinds of civil attacks. What's the move when the feds finally decide they're understaffed?
You know, I suspect what we're going to find out the hard way is that Bitcoin, with that kind of capabilities by the government, isn't all that interesting compared to existing centralized systems. I mean, I think regardless what your political leanings are, you know, if you believe that that's the future of Bitcoin, you probably shouldn't be bothering investing in it because it is not going to be able to compete with existing, faster, cheaper, you know, easier, less technically complex centralized systems.
It's not going to happen all at once everywhere. So they'll move out of New York and they'll go to havens of Bitcoin and create Bitcoin utopias where taxation is possible.
And you know, ultimately, like the reason why any cryptocurrency works is really two things. First of all, is this whole proof of work, which is based on being able to get a specific type of computer power. And then secondly, it's about being able to distribute information freely. And I think we can certainly imagine a world where you can't distribute information freely. I'm not sure we want to live in such a world, but that is a possible option. And I could certainly see governments trying to go down that path. And I think we should go fight back in the same way that we fought back key escrow before.
You don't have to mention it, sometimes you just have to read headlines.
Yeah, I like the story of Philip Zimmermann. That's a cool story. Because in the 90s, encryption technology was like classified as a munitions, which is like if you were exporting cryptography, is the same as if you're exporting like guns or bombs or fighter jets or planes. And so cryptography was illegal to distribute. And there was one anti-nuclear activist called Philip Zimmermann, and he made like the world's first free and freely available encryption software for everybody to use, for the masses. And immediately they started a court investigation in which he was facing 20 years in prison. And what Philip Zimmermann did is he printed the source code for PGP in a hardback book, which he sold internationally via MIT Press, where selling books is protected under the First Amendment free speech rights in the US by the Constitution. And you could buy the book, and you could take off the hard covers, separate the pages, scan them in, convert them using an OCR scanner to text, download the free GNU compiler collection and compile it into PGP. And they dropped the case against him. And now encryption is used everywhere.
So how do you print a continuously updating blockchain?
Well, fortunately, I own a forest, so.
You're Todd.
Alright, we'll finish on that then.
That's the last question.
There's a last question.
Yeah, it's like a follow-up.
Follow-up, okay. Well, we'll take
Guys,
that.
no more, yeah?
Where's the forest? So that's immutable.
I'm sorry for Christian Aranaga, there's been 3 or 4 mentions of the cost of Bitcoin being higher, considerably higher than centralized currency. I'm just wondering, is there any kind of research or any places you could go to look at see those comparisons? And is anybody working on that area?
I think it's really easy to understand why technically, which is a decentralized currency means it's going to be more than one copy of the data, more than one set of computers verifying it, more than one, sets of infrastructure dealing with it. And that's automatically, it's easy to see why that's more expensive than just having one.
Yeah, but you have to compare that to the cost of enforcement of a centralized system.
And that's why, in the absence of regulation, the centralized system wins.
In the absence of regulation.
If it does have regulation, then things get interesting.
Right.
But in the absence
of regulation, it's going to decentralize.
No, in the absence of regulation, you can go have a bank which lets you go and deal with Chaumian money that's completely anonymous, fast, instant, it's great.
But if there's no regulation, then I'll start another bank.
Yeah,
so will everyone else in this room.
But you are operating multiple centralized entities.
We went through this with Eagle, right? In those days, centralized systems were simply more efficient.
Right.
It's just they had exposure to regulation.
Right.
Another way to measure the cost of running Bitcoin is to notice, 25 new Bitcoin every 10 minutes to the miners. That's 25 times, $470. That's a pretty high cost. Arguably, with proof of stake, that cost can come down, but arguably, proof of stake doesn't work. So, there are technical problems.
Also, the cheaper we try to make Bitcoin transactions, the more we end up centralizing the network. It's not like a clear-cut thing, but it's like when you actually look at the different trade-offs that you can make in terms of development decisions, it's things that end up centralizing it more at the expense, and that comes at the expense of Bitcoin being uncensored, Bitcoin being private.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Very interesting. I will publish the video on the YouTube channel and watch it. So, thank you, Internet, for those watching us at home.
Yeah, cool.
Brilliant. Cheers, guys. Thank you.
All the fun. Okay, I don't know if you can hear me.
I got you now. You can hear me.
Yes, I can. Well, thank you everyone for staying tuned.
Well,
Sorry
that
about
was
the
a lot.
technical difficulties.
Well, that was a lot.
Yeah, it was a lot to take in. I mean, they were talking about a shitload of stuff. Am I too loud? Let's check that. Cool. Woo! So no, to answer one of the questions that we had in our own Q&A, no, Vitalik is not here. I believe that he's in some other country somewhere. He likes to gallivant. So no, this was just the London crew, and then obviously Amir, as you know, if you can tuning into our live streams recently, has a new Bitcoin squat in Soho. That's right in the centre of London, very expensive part of London as well. And he's got a squat there. He's attracted some cool Bitcoin developers to work on some of this anonymization technology that he's currently pursuing, along with Peter Todd and Julia Toriansky, or Brave the World, so YouTube channel, go check it out. So we're all kind of here. It's kind of, we're centralizing a decentralized project around the city of London. And I think what I really picked up from this meetup was that people are kind of open to the idea. Apparently, we do have different Barclays. We're actually at the Barclays Accelerator, which is like financial bootstrapping for startups in London. And apparently, there were some Barclays employees here who I'm told are kind of interested in this new area of technology. Recently, we had the Bank of England come out and actually say that Bitcoin could end up being the future of finance. It could end up doing away with a lot of these centralized financial institutions. So I think what's happening today, what you saw, was people kind of open to the idea, but also with a healthy level of skepticism, talking about things like assassination markets, talking about trading drugs, and what are the implications of this brave new world that we just seem to be steamrolling into, because these anarchists, self-styled, I should say, I don't know if they're really anarchists, they're latte drinking anarchists, let's say, they're iPhone owning anarchists, a lot of them. Very middle class, very privileged, so of course they can do this. But as I said the other day on my show, I don't think that undermines the quality of their arguments. Just because they're privileged doesn't mean that what they're saying is wrong. And I think what you saw today with these Q&As at the end, we have spent almost the same amount of time on Q&As than we did in the actual talks. What you see is people saying, okay, but before we go step off this cliff, we'd better have a good think about what we're actually trying to do here with all this anonymization. Like, what if people start going around just killing each other? What if, actually, one of the best questions we've got was, I'll have to go track her down, she was saying, what happens if one person sets up 2 accounts and then just starts doing transactions to try and create a false positive within the network, tries to create an ostensibly honest node within that network, but then suddenly that node goes rogue and suddenly it starts doing bad things. At this stage, it's already got a very good reputation because it was just trading between itself. And then it becomes very, very difficult to hack. And Peter Todd's eventual answer, because she was kind of saying, look, I'm not trying to put you on the spot here, I just want to know your thoughts. She wasn't even trying to pin people down to a final answer. He ended up saying, look, there are downsides to this too, that essentially Julia came in and she said, well, you've already got that. It's called the NSA. We already have spying. We already have a lot of these bad things happening. Assassination markets happen, as we had on Twitter just now. Let's see if I can pull my Twitter stream up, because it was kind of getting pretty dense. Here we go, like with Blue Meanie and between Blue Meanie and Peer Rebel. Now, where was it? We had somebody, here we go, who actually published the UN Security Council meeting notes where, you know, Gaddafi was essentially assassinated. You know, we already have these systems. These assassination markets already exist, was the assertion from both Pi Rebel, our friend Nick, and also Julia Turiansky. And essentially all you're doing now is you're giving it to everyone. You're just saying that everyone can have this now. So that would be my takeaway. How about you, Theo? What are you thinking about this?
Well, I was still paying attention to all of it, actually, to be honest. But I was, I heard. I think that, like you said, a lot of these things that people they're saying they're skeptical about already exist today in a different form. So that's nothing new. Assassination market or fraud or all of these things are nothing new. They just, because of the media and because of some misconceptions that partially were cleared up today, I think that crypto in general lends itself to fraud or things like assassination markets, but it doesn't necessarily lend itself more or perhaps less so to fraud and other bad things people are worried about, that they're skeptical about. And I'm always a fan of dipping in the water. I mean, like you said, it's good to have something to fall on, but I think people should just use it and see what it's like, or at least an example of, rather than just talk. I mean, it's good to talk and to figure out, get everything cleared up, but I think if people just started using it for something, they would see right away how it works, and a lot of their misconceptions would be cleared up, I think.
Yeah, and also I think a lot of people here are going to just have to learn how to code.
Hear you.
They're going to have to learn how to. Can you hear me or not?
Yes.
Yeah, I should be coming through. Okay, fine. I think a lot of people here. One of the things you didn't hear before we went on the live stream was people talking about the fact that actually a lot of these people here with questions are just going to have to learn how to read the code. And they're going to have to stop asking stupid questions, because we're getting a lot of the same questions coming up over and over again. And I think for somebody like Amir, he's like, well, look, you can just learn how to code, right? You can just go ahead and do that. That it's not like law where it's kind of, very dense and you have to, it's a very regulated industry. The thing is, people do have to get off their asses, and they do have to go out and just learn this code for themselves. Not to the point where they could program it and become virtuoso programmers, but at least so that they can understand it and read it and speak about it a bit more intelligently.
I think your sound is off or something.
Yeah, I know. I was waiting to see if you wanted to respond.
All right, okay. It's going to happen at some point. I mean, I suppose a few hundred years
Yeah,
ago,
sure, of course.
people couldn't read. I mean...
Yeah, we have 23. Do you want to come on the video? This is George.
Hello.
Hello, it's George Hallam, and you're one of the developers for Ethereum?
I'm working on communications for Ethereum. And,
yeah, we're still live. We're still live. Yeah.
Live Candid with Stefan.
23 people.
Right, so what do I do? How does this work?
So we're live on the internet on World Crypto Network. This is my friend Stefan Subal. Stefan, sorry.
Hey, what's up?
Thank you.
And this is Theo.
Hi, Theo.
Hello.
Hi, Theo.
And this is Ksenia, but Ksenia has not got a camera on at the moment.
Hey, what's up?
Hello. So yeah, actually they can't hear you. They can't hear you, so I'll have to just say whatever you say. But anyway, so we've had 20 to 30 people join us today.
That's so good. That's so good.
So it's really cool. And aside from one little glitch with the sound, because Theo muted us for some reason, it was pretty much cool the whole way through. So yeah,
I'm glad to hear that very much. Thank you so much for doing that.
No, that's really cool.
Thank you very much for watching, everyone.
What's really cool about these live streams is it helps you get like an extended audience who can feel present. They have to be in London in order to be here. Like you still feel like they had that live experience. But we've still also got a recording of this event right behind us. There's a camera right behind your head there. There's a camera there, so it's not like there won't be a better quality version of this video. So the way we like to think of these videos, because it costs like £10,000 for like the cameras and everything, I just use like the cheap stuff off of Amazon. And so any tips to the address below would be really helpful, because then maybe we can improve the quality over time. But then also later on, maybe in the next 7 days, we'll put up a decent quality version as well. But this just helps you to be present so that you can like join in and actually hear things as they're coming out. Because we're living in a world now that's much more contemporaneous and much more kind of, if you don't learn it within 5 minutes, it's already old. You know what I mean? So did you guys have any thoughts? I was just saying before you came on that I feel like people are starting to say, okay, this looks like the way things are going, but there's also a healthy level of skepticism, where it's like, okay, but before we go jump off this cliff, can we just talk about the online assassination markets and like all this shit before we go into this brave world?
I mean, it's not like it's fanaticism. It's like, you know, we're happy to criticize ourselves, and we're happy to understand our feelings and obviously learn from them as well. You know, as we move forward, there's going to be some things that, you know, centralized departments or whatever can do better. But Ethereum has its place in the decentralized world.
I think what's interesting is that question, which was, when do you think that the legal system will recognize these things? When people start asking that kind of question, you can feel the mood has considerably changed from what it was even a year ago, where it was just sci-fi stuff, you know, and that's interesting.
That's an interesting point. So we've talked about this in our books and our films, but now it's actually becoming real, and people go, okay, I'm not sure I want this. Yeah, we can't mess this up, can we? We've got to get this right.
Yeah, well, it's bleeding edge technology, and the pace that it is moving forward is just phenomenal. Like, you know, even a week in crypto time is like 6 months, maybe at the beginning of internet. Like, you know, things change daily. So obviously it's great that these people at home are taking the effort to you know, taking what we've said today. So thank you very much. And yeah, try and keep in touch and listen, hear what we've got to say, and we'll be moving. We'll be done soon. When are we looking to launch them then?
February, March 2015.
Yeah, so you know, we're moving forward. We've got our funding now. We move forward. We move our offices. We're hiring.
Berlin mostly.
You know, looking for people in Berlin, C++ developers.
Where can people get involved right now with Ethereum?
GitHub.
So it's github.com/Ethereum. I'll put the link.
There's Python, C++, and Go, and all three need a lot of love and attention, because so far it's only been Gavin for C++. There's a single developer there, and a single developer for the Go version, alongside with Maran for a little while, of course, Jeffrey. Vitalik and Heiko with the only two on the Serpent client, but Heiko wasn't full-time until recently, so we need a lot of tests, and we need people to break this thing. Go and break it.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. All right. Well, look, thank you very much for joining us. Let me just get that link up for you on the screen just before we go. Thank you to Theo and Ksenia. I'm going to have to go now because we're all kind of like heading out, and also, yeah, it's getting noisy. But let me just pull up very, very quickly. There we go. So this is the GitHub. So it's github.com/Ethereum. Spelt like that, as you can see. I'll put the link down in the doobly-doo later on. Also, please stay tuned to the World Crypto Network. Later on, in a couple of hours, we have the Bitcoin group, which hopefully I will be home for. If not, I apologize. I might have to join a bit late. But thanks very much again for joining us tonight, and I'll see you again next time.
Thank you, guys.